same
No,
batter?
no. Everyone's different.
Everyone has its own.
And that's what I think is fun is that, we do a ramen noodle one that we're going to do next here.
Wow.
We do one with
Yeah, that's good.
pecans and a maple bourbon sauce with pecans. We do one with like garlic croutons and like a Caesar
Man.
salad dressing.
Oh man, really? We're in the lovely home of Brian and Jackie, and I am, well, both excited and grateful because I don't know if you all know, but one, I might have been the biggest Ample Hills fan. My wife, for sure, was the biggest Ample Hills fan. And I think the saddest thing when we left Brooklyn to move up to Westchester was honeycomb ice cream, that we weren't going to have it anymore. So thank you for making it. We have a lot to talk about today because we're going to dig into the history of Ample Hills. We're going to talk about maybe some spicy stuff around how you grew and investors. And then we have a new concept that you guys are working on, which we're slightly hush-hush about, but we're going to get into the kitchen a little bit. So anyways, just to start, for anybody that doesn't know, Ample Hills is the best ice cream that's ever been, presented and invented, started in Brooklyn. And I have the founders here. So I would love to just get a quick background from both of you, only because I actually don't know a lot. And I purposely wanted to sort of just learn as I go. So I know a little bit, but maybe just sharing like how you ended up creating an ice cream shop, because I don't think either of you came from that world, right?
No, absolutely not. Thanks for coming all the way down from Westchester to Brooklyn. But yeah, I was 40 at the time we started Ample Hills, and so I definitely think of it as a midlife crisis for me. I had been a writer writing bad TV movies for Sci-Fi Channel, like Monster of the Week kind of movies, and don't look them up. And then producing and directing audiobooks, radio plays. What were you doing?
I was teaching.
Oh,
that's
right.
I was teaching at the high school that I went to in Manhattan. And
wow. So the same high school you went to at?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so I just always loved ice cream, made ice cream at home. It was just always something that, connected back to childhood. And it was just, there was nothing really deeper than just, my own personal love of making ice cream.
How did you stumble upon starting to make ice cream?
Ben and Jerry's cookbook was the first cookbook I had, and it's like a no cookbook, with like raw eggs in it. You'd never see a cookbook sort of telling you to make ice cream that way now. But it was, that was probably the first one that I ever saw. But I don't remember. Wait, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you might have started making ice cream from the cookbook before we met. But when we met, he was obsessed with ice cream. He was always obsessed with ice cream. So we would have to go to like any ice cream shop in any town, wherever we were. We had to, try that ice cream. And then up in the Adirondacks, where my family had a cabin for many years and we'd vacation there, that's where you started actually experimenting,
right. Yeah.
making all of those flavors.
Mostly to impress her parents because, we weren't married yet. And, I had a hand-cranked ice cream maker, the rock salt and ice, and, would sit and I felt like I was like in a Norman Rockwell painting and, making ice cream on the porch and trying to impress her parents and be part of that family. But in any event, it was just, it was like a slow burn. I was trying, again, if Spielberg had called, and it wasn't a bad TV movie that I was writing, but, a blockbuster summer film, we never would have gotten to Ample Hills. But I never quite crossed over from, writing bad TV movies or sort of scrounging to get that next audiobook deal or radio play deal. So at a certain point there, when I hit 40, it was just like, it was running out of options. And I just felt like we had this nest egg that we'd been lucky enough to have from having been in an apartment and sold an apartment. And so it was slowly dwindling away, though, as I was trying to like sell the next great, American screenplay. And so at the low hanging fruit was, let's take this money and buy Brian a job, by opening up a neighborhood ice cream shop in Prospect Heights in Brooklyn. And so that was really the initial thing, was to sort of fulfill that dream of making ice cream for other people. But, am I remembering that right?
No, you're remembering it right. We also had 2 little kids, and we wanted to have something in our neighborhood. Nothing like Ample Hills had existed really in our neighborhood. There was a couple of good ice cream places that we frequented, but there wasn't like a place where you could pass the time, bring your family, bring your friends, and bring your kids. And so, as new parents, we kind of just wanted that for our neighborhood, for our community. And that was my passion, I think, about it. That got me excited, not necessarily the making of the ice cream, because I don't necessarily do that part of the business. But
So I mean, I get like you're a fanatic about ice cream. That makes sense. But it wasn't just like an ice cream shop. I mean, like from the outset, it was just insanely delicious.
Mhm.
But how did you perfect that craft? What was it? What was it that made Ample Hills Ample Hills? We can talk
Yeah.
about the environment too, because you bring your kids, you can sit down, all that stuff.
Mhm.
But apart from that as well, like the ice cream itself was just. I mean, I haven't had better ice cream.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I do think that, I knew that I couldn't start an ice cream shop, a neighborhood ice cream shop, having been a screenwriter and considered myself, a creative, and not go and make the ice cream from scratch. I just knew that I couldn't do that. I couldn't go buy ice cream from somebody else. Lots of ice cream shops are perfectly good at doing that. Or even buying a base, where you get the milk, cream, sugar, and eggs and all that together, and you get it into a shop, and then you add cans of flavorings, which most ice cream shops are doing, that make their ice cream from scratch. I knew I had to do it all from scratch: crack eggs, cook the ice cream base, all of that, just because. I just didn't want to, like, I wanted it to be creative exercise. And I saw it really very much like trying to come up with the next crazy monster, like a half alligator man, half, duck monster, or whatever it is, I didn't come up with that one. But anyway, giant killer birds, or sharks, flying in tornadoes. Like, the creative muscle to come up with ice cream flavors wasn't any different than that. In terms of the technical skill to make the ice cream, that was just a long period of trial and error of like making ice cream, sharing it with people, making ice cream, sharing it with people, and getting a sense of what worked and what didn't work. I went to the ice cream school that famously Ben and Jerry went to when they started. Penn State has like a week-long ice cream chemistry class in the middle of January that I went to, and that was really helpful. Of course, everybody there says don't make your own ice cream from scratch, buy ice cream, because it's chemically complicated, and, getting the fats and the solids right and all of that stuff. But again, I got the tools and the base background there. That's really sort of how we got off and running. The number one thing I think that made our ice cream different at the time, and I do think other people are doing these things now, was increasing what are called the solids in the ice cream. Basically, the number one ingredient in whole milk is water, and the number one ingredient in heavy cream is water. I mean, 60% of heavy cream is water, and 96% of whole milk is water. And water, you need the properties of water that turn into ice, the freezing properties of it, to turn your ice cream from a liquid into a solid. But nobody wants icy ice cream. And of course, you could make ice cream with just milk and cream and sugar. But when you do that, you end up with something that's icier or thinner. There's not as much there. And so skim milk powder, a non-fat dry milk powder, is a tool that ice cream makers use. And that's basically all the milk solids without the milk water. It basically thickens or absorbs the water that's there.
Yep.
And gives you a milkier, more solid taste. And then, so that was one of the things, was just increasing the amount of solids. And then at the time with Ample Hills, we were using eggs and egg yolks in the ice cream. Not enough that it became real custard flavor like, but just enough to serve as another emulsifier or thickener to the ice cream. Later on, when we, lost Ample Hills and we started our second ice cream brand, The Social, we actually jettisoned the eggs because I was interested in seeing if I could make what's considered like a Philadelphia style ice cream. It's a cleaner flavor because ultimately the eggs do provide a flavor, which is a nice flavor, but it's also a barrier to whatever the flavor of the ice cream is. And so people that are real Philadelphia style ice cream fanatics like the cleanness of that product. And so I was really interested though, can you make a Philadelphia style ice cream that still has the thickness and the richness and the chew, the sort of texture that we had at Ample Hills, which comes from all that body, from the solids of the eggs and the skim milk powder. And I found that using glucose, which is an invert sugar, a liquid form of sucrose or table sugar, if you're using some glucose into it, it has this same kind of real thickening chew, gives the ice cream a real chew. And so I really don't think we miss the eggs, and in that way you're also removing another allergen that some people have. And so anyway, those are some of the ways I think that we thought about how to make the ice cream better or different.
But even like the things you folded into it, like I mean, I mentioned the honeycomb, which one, you got to have a lot of honeycomb, which it did. But then the actual ingredients independent of the ice cream were also really good.
Yeah.
How did you also try to spend time somewhere learning that, or was that just trial and error?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, it was just trial and error, making lots of brownies and cookies and cakes and all of those kind of things at home. And the nice thing there that I still love about making ice cream is you don't have to worry about what any of those things look like. Bakers and people going to all those schools, they really have to worry about presentation.
Oh, that's a good point.
And I really don't have to worry about it with ice cream. As long as I can chop it up into little pieces and put it into the ice cream, it only matters what it tastes like. And so it's kind of a freedom to really think about, what's the densest, chewiest cake that I could put into an ice cream, or brittles or toffees or cookies, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Some of those recipes came from one of them came from your mom or your grandma, the Nona D's, the oatmeal.
Oh yeah,
No, your mom. Yeah,
the Nona D's oatmeal. Oh, that was a good one.
Nona D's oatmeal lace. That was an oatmeal cookie that your mom made.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really good one. What's the key to honeycomb?
The key to honeycomb?
Yeah, to making it really good.
Oh,
because yours was like they're obviously they're big pieces, but the texture is what's important, right? Like it's still something you can bite into. It doesn't break your teeth, but enough that it.
It's funny because honeycomb, if you just eat it, the same honeycomb that we would make, if you would just eat it outside of the ice cream, it did have the effect of kind of breaking your teeth or sticking to your teeth. It was not that pleasant. There's something about eating it within the milk and cream and the fats there that coat the experience. Sounds a little funny, but like when you're eating it in ice cream is definitely a little better. But, honeycomb is really just, a sugar. We would make ours with some golden syrup, which again is a form of sucrose, but it is less refined, so it has some of those molasses or caramel notes to it. And is it baking soda now? Like, it's been so long. Yeah, baking soda that aerates it when you get to a certain temperature, and then you spread it out and try to like keep it from collapsing. You know? But fun fact, what was that? Oh my God,
100 Acre Wood.
100 Acre Wood. That's right.
What's that?
I think you're thinking of that one.
So tell them about.
Oh God, 100 Acre Woods was an homage to Winnie the Pooh. 100 Acre Wood, and it was I think it was was it a salted honey base or sweet cream base? Oh, sweet cream base with honeycomb candy, and then we added gummy bears. It was like all natural gummy bears, but we quickly realized how.
No, we made it once. I mean, like.
No, we made it more than once. It actually made it into our cookbook, I think, didn't it? Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't remember now.
The problem with gummy bears when they're in ice cream is that they break your teeth.
Yeah, those were vicious.
Yeah, so we quickly took them out, and then that's how we had ice cream, the flavor called Sweet as Honey, which is I think the one you're referring to with the honeycomb. But it started life as 100 Acre Wood, which was.
Oh, interesting. It's so funny too, like the counterintuitiveness of flavors sometimes. I remember at Bark, which by the way we tried to use your ice cream a lot, but we couldn't figure out how to get enough wholesale. We use an incredible one, Il Laboratorio, which is
Oh,
not really ice
sure.
cream. It's gelato, but John's stuff is incredible. And we realized that we had to like over season to make the milkshakes. So
Mhm.
we needed like this sort of custom, like super dark chocolate with extra salt, because once you add the milk,
You're diluting it.
you're
Yeah.
diluting it. And to get it like, or for the coffee ice cream, we would using the Gorilla coffee, but we'd have to like use like a double strength cold brew mixed into the coffee, because the ice cream just mellows everything out.
Yeah, I'll tell you, because it took us years to realize that, and we didn't actually do it at Ample Hills. But when we started the social, I knew that I wanted to get those milkshakes and raise them up a notch. And so we started making all of our own syrup. So we made a chocolate syrup from scratch and a vanilla syrup, and we made different flavored syrups that we would then add to the milkshake. So do the same thing you're talking about, which would, if we made a chocolate milkshake, we'd put the chocolate syrup in, or the vanilla, or an orange freeze, we'd add orange syrup to it, because otherwise you're just simply diluting it. Yeah.
It's just how dumb we were for our vanilla milkshake. I wanted it to be like really, really. So for the first year or two at Bark, we scraped a vanilla bean into every vanilla shake. So you have vanilla ice cream. It was like this custom vanilla bean.
Yeah.
It was John's, vanilla gelato, which was incredible.
That was profitable.
And we would scrape a vanilla bean into each shake.
Yeah.
It seemed like
Wow.
they were like, "What are we doing here? This is crazy." And you would have to to order, be scraping this.
That's great.
That's the dumb stuff.
Yeah. Well, when we started Ample Hills, we started by scraping hundreds of vanilla beans. We had a vat pasteurizer.
Mhm.
The very first, when we started Ample Hills, we had a 15-gallon vat pasteurizer. Within 2 weeks, I had on order a 50-gallon vat pasteurizer. And by the end of the summer, we had a 100-gallon vat pasteurizer, because we just couldn't, it didn't, we couldn't make enough ice cream. But we were scraping, we'd get 100 vanilla beans and we'd scrape them, into the thing. And then we would throw in like a handful of coffee beans, into the vanilla ice cream as well. And then you strain all of that out. And it really was incredible. But beyond one shop, you can't do that. It's just
that vanilla. I don't know if you use a vanilla paste, but that stuff is incredible.
Yeah.
Like what's the company? Tahitian Gold. They make this like vanilla paste. I remember when we found it, that's when we stopped using the vanilla beans. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It was really expensive.
Yeah.
Clearly just like ground up vanilla beans, but really good. Well, you turned this sort of idea into Ample Hills, which is pretty insane that you were not an ice cream person and then all of a sudden opened up like this incredible ice cream shop. But like, what were your roles when you guys opened? Were you both full time in the shop?
No, actually, I was teaching still, so I kept my teaching position. At night, I would be managing staff and scheduling and doing all front of house operations. And Brian was, kind of tied to the kitchen. You came home, occasionally.
Yeah. But, Jackie was responsible for all the hiring. And so a lot of the students that she had, because she was teaching at a high school. And so her students would come and work for us. And so it just very naturally, sort of the role definition became, I was back of house and she was the front of house. And front of house, it also was all the culture that sort of happened organically at first, that we then later codified into, manuals and all the kind of things that you do. But that really came out of your background as a teacher and working with.
Yeah, and then doing the birthday parties. That was a huge part of our business at, Ample Hills in the beginning too, because, again, we had these little kids and we'd go to these terrible like birthday parties in like a, cement bunker, and like, they just like churn the party out, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that, I had to spend 2 hours of my life in this thing. And so I was like, we have to make our parties like really fun and really experiential. And that's, I think it was like our last like $5,000 that we had, that everybody said, oh no, you want to, keep a buffer in the bank, And we're like, no.
Not that 5,000 would have been
Wasn't that much.
But we spent that on the
ice cream churning bicycle.
Oh, I remember that thing. Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. I didn't have kids at the time, but I wish I could bring my kids to.
We did so many birthday parties with that, with kids getting to ride the bicycle.
Yeah.
Our own kids had, every birthday they had for the first, 3 or 4 or 5 years, the shop.
What is the food cost on ice cream?
The food cost. Well, you mean the actual dollar amount?
Yeah, like percentage, like on a percentage wise.
Oh,
Like
I mean,
you do like a
it should be at like, 25-30%. Oftentimes we were pushing 35%, just because we were, buying, the best ingredients and the best cream and the best eggs, and because I mean, like anything, you can make ice cream with, this heavy cream, which costs, $80 for a 5 gallon bag, or you can pay $120 for a 5 gallon bag. But, and maybe 75% of your audience isn't going to tell the difference. But, the 25 that can are going to be the ones that
yeah,
are the
yeah,
brand ambassadors. So I think the answer is it depends on, who's making the ice cream and where it's coming from. But our goal was always to try to get it around 30%.
yeah. And was there one flavor that was like the most profitable of the?
I mean, the sweetest honey was really good because it didn't take much honey to make honeycomb, and it didn't have vanilla in it, which is expensive because the base was sweet
Yeah,
cream, and that flavor was very
yeah.
popular. So I guess that would probably be the.
It sounds like you were responsible for this, but like, was there a lot of variability in the final product? Like, how did you like QA and
Mm.
maintain consistency?
I mean, the product, I'm sure, changed so much. I mean, mostly because I was constantly, tweaking it and changing it as we went. I remember listening to one of the episodes you did with Wiley DeFries about how he, kept iterating and iterating, and I definitely suffered from that for the first while. But I mean, I was the only one making the ice cream for a long time. And so that was really the quality control, was because I was just making it, and I knew I would make it the same way and put the same amount of pieces of cookie dough or ooey gooey cake in. And then over time, I had other people and I would train them. But, it's a challenging thing because it's very hard to say, uh, this flavor gets exactly 3 cups of cookie dough mixed into it. I mean, because you're mixing it in as you're going, and so you're trying to get the layers to all be right.
Yeah,
It's not a machine that's doing it; it's a person, and
yeah,
so it's
yeah,
not just following. You can follow the recipe to make sure that it always has the same amount of milk and cream
yep,
and sugar in it,
yep,
but the actual churning of it, you might pull it a little sooner, a little later, it gets a little thicker. So those were all just learnings that had to happen over time to
yeah.
try to really get consistency.
Did you always plan to scale to more locations?
Yeah.
No.
No. I guess at first it was really just, let's have a neighborhood shop, and if it can pay a salary for me and Jackie can keep teaching, and then like, oh wow, maybe it could make enough money that Jackie could not be teaching. But it was really never, it was definitely there was a fantasy like, oh, maybe we can, be the next Ben and Jerry's. I mean, that was always like at least a fantasy, but it wasn't really like I had no concept of the steps that one would take to do that. I mean, we were just, let's open up a shop and see what happens kind of thing.
Yeah,
So much so that, when we opened, how many days did we?
4.
4 days. Yeah. Yeah. And then we ran out of all the ice cream and we had to shut the doors,
yep,
for
yep.
9.5 days. I mean, so that was terrifying. I mean, so yeah, we didn't really plan for the success that happened later.
How did the scale happen? Did the investor come to you and say, let's do more?
We were bursting at the seams at the Vanderbilt shop. So that's when, we decided that we had to, get a bigger space. And we were also busting at the seams with the parties that we had created. So it was trying to find a place that, we could have, be open and have parties at, which we really couldn't do at Ample Hills on Vanderbilt Avenue. So, and that's when we opened the Guana shop, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was we did not have investors at that point. We took out a small business loan, right? And we didn't.
We had one guy that helped us out a little
Oh
bit.
yeah. But we didn't. The institutional kind of venture capital and the sort of raising and scaling that came later. We basically used a good deal of the profits from the first shop. So this was maybe 3 years later. We opened the Vanderbilt shop in 2011, and the Gowanus shop opened in 2014. And again, we hadn't really thought through. I mean, you can walk from one of those shops to the other one in about 15 to 16 minutes. And so Why do you open a 3,500 square foot new shop, 15-minute walk from the original one? So, and yet in the very first year, both shops did 10% better than the original shop had done. I just think because we sort of opened up a big playground with that one had a birthday party room and a roof deck, and you could, and it's where we then made all the ice cream. It was at that moment that we opened that shop, that first summer that we opened that first shop. The scaling really happened as a result primarily of one thing, which was that we started shipping the ice cream around the country. Like we put it on Gold Belly.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I forgot
And
about
so
that.
once it was on Gold Belly, one of the very first weeks that we were doing this, and it was in August or so of 2014, Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, ordered ice cream, and we saw his name, and we had just published our cookbook, and we sent him a copy of our cookbook, and so maybe, I don't know, a week after he got the ice cream, he wrote an email to me. I don't even know how he found it, but anyway, he wrote an email to me and was just like, I've had ice cream all around the world. I love your ice cream. It's the best, I've ever had. Let me know if I can be of any help. Maybe Ample Hills at Disney, ? Bob,
Wow.
And so it was one of those moments where everything changed. I mean, it was just, really, I spent about an hour or two, like, not sure that it was real,
Yeah.
somebody
That
messing
wouldn't
with
believe
me.
it either.
Because it wasn't like Bob at Disney. It was like he has, a different email, like if he's emailing you, because he's probably gets thousands of emails a day. And so I wrote him back, and I grew up in South Florida, and I went to Disney, once a year, twice a year as a kid. And nobody does storytelling and branding the way that Disney does. And literally, I mean, Ample Hills is far from Disney as a brand, but in terms of the spirit of what we were trying to do with the storytelling and the name and the culture that we were creating and the way that we would tell stories with different flavors, it was right up Disney's alley, and it was clearly inspired in part by my experience of that. And so I wrote him back and said, yes, that would be great. And,
Yes, please.
let's have Ample Hills at Disney. Yeah, sure. And so we had a call, was the first thing. And then he
Did
really.
you ask him if he saw your movies?
What's that?
Did you ask him if he saw your movies?
No, I did not.
Did not mention.
I did think about, seeing if I could, write for Disney at some point. Maybe I should still think about that. I don't know. One of the people years later that we got to meet was J.J. Abrams, because we did Star Wars ice cream.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so I did tell him that I had been a writer, because I was trying to see if it get in. That didn't happen. I haven't written anything for Bad Robot. But in any event, Bob became, really a mentor, and we ended up, opening a store on Disney's property. They have something called the Boardwalk there, outside of the resort, but near where they have hotels. And we opened a store there maybe a year later, and started talking about all these other things. And because of that relationship, around the same time, some investor, somebody came in and wanted to see if we were interested in trying to do a real raise and start to scale. And so, none of it was us sort of going out to try to have happen. We were responding to incoming, because we were lucky enough to be in this position that we'd created this thing, and there had been so much press and publicity around it. And then with Disney, even more so. So we did that first equity raise. I think it was for $4 million, with the idea that we would, build out a bunch of more shops. And we did that. And then following that, I think we did an $8 million raise, but that was the idea.
Same investor or different?
No, this was it was dozens of investors.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a bunch of different people. Brooklyn Bridge Ventures, Charlie O'Donnell led the very first.
That's right.
Which was the $4 million round, and then the second one was different people, and I can't remember all of the individuals, but there were still a bunch of people. We ended up talking with Danny Meyer's folk, Danny Meyer himself, and about doing an investment, but then that didn't work out. We didn't love the details of it so much, and then he ended up investing in Salt and
That's
Straw
right. Yeah. Yeah.
very, very soon after. But that $8 million was basically to build out the factory
Yeah.
in Red Hook in Brooklyn, because we were now at like 7 or 8 or 9, 10 shops, and we knew that we couldn't keep growing out of the Gowanus shop, and so we had to get into a bigger space, or we had to start co-packing the ice cream, and we knew that we had to be the kind of brand that would make ice cream. And along the way, we had met Jerry
From Ben and Jerry's.
yeah, from Ben and Jerry's, and we had become friends with him and met him a number of times. And I remember one of the things him telling us, which was that, them building the factory there in Vermont and opening it to the public was one of the biggest marketing decisions they ever made. That that people can go and touch the ground where Ben and Jerry's has made. And it doesn't matter even today, it's made at like 7 or 8 different factories around the country. It still actually is also made still in Vermont at that factory, maybe like a small percentage of it. But you still can go and touch that ground, and that it connects you to a brand in a way that is profound and real. And so we knew that we had to do that, and we had to do it in Brooklyn. And I, that impulse, I think, was right. But we didn't have the people around the table and the smarts around the table to be able to build and execute a 15,000 square foot factory on budget, and one that could service the existing business and not have an overhead that would sink the company. And so the same impulse that was correct, what we didn't execute on in a way. And I think ultimately that was the downfall.
I mean, you're 40 or just before 40, and this is a hobby. You love ice cream. It's a hobby of yours while you're writing. And then fast forward 5, 6, 7, I don't know how many years later, Bob Iger is asking you to put your ice cream shop into Disney. Jerry from Ben and Jerry is, now a friend of yours. You're like learning from him. How much of this was a surprise for you? What was going through your heads when you were at this point where you've scaled this thing, you have 9, 10 shops, you're talking with all of these, Sony and you have Star Wars, ice cream. What was going through your head at this time?
Yeah. I mean, it was a dream come true. It was mind blowing. I mean, I'll tell you one story that I think sort of encapsulates the moment where I was just like, okay, I'm done. I can hang it up, and everything is good from here on out. And that's at Christmas time. You remember this? The first year at Gowanus, when Bob came to visit the shop.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was, I guess, maybe 5 or 6 months after we'd started talking with him and we'd put some of these plans in motion. He decided to send ice cream to his Christmas list, and Bob's Christmas list is 60 or 70 people long. And you can just imagine some of the people that would be on Bob Iger's Christmas list. And it was just like, oh my God, this guy's getting Ampulse ice cream. This guy's getting Ampulse ice cream. And then one of the things that happened in the couple of weeks heading up to Christmas, we knew he was coming to visit us on the 26th or the 27th to come to see the shop for the first time. And we hadn't met him in person until that. But about 2 weeks before Christmas, we got a call from some captain or somebody on a yacht in the Bahamas saying, can you get the ice cream down to this yacht in the Bahamas? And we're like, no, sorry, we can't ship the ice cream to the Bahamas. And they're like, oh, and we're like, why? And they're like, well, it's okay. And then like a day later, we got a call from, a management company in Los Angeles saying like, we're trying to get ice cream to this yacht in the Bahamas. And we're like, okay, why? They're like, well, it's Steven Spielberg's yacht.
Oh my
And
God.
he's in the Bahamas for the holidays, and he wants the ice cream on his yacht. And we're like, oh, that's really awesome, but I don't know how to get the ice cream to him. And they're like, this is somebody who's not used to, having somebody say no to them. And they're like, how they could fix this problem. And so I don't know, one of Spielberg's sons, was it?
Yeah, it was a son.
Yeah, was flying through New York before going to the Bahamas. And so we ended up working it out so that we were able to give Spielberg's son a bunch of this ice cream, and then he brought it down. And so it was just like, I was like, oh my God, Spielberg's going to have our ice cream. And so I knew from having read things that like Bob Iger and Spielberg were friends and they knew each other, but Spielberg hadn't Bob hadn't sent, he wasn't on his Christmas list. And so when Bob came into the shop that first time, I told him the story and I said, oh, you won't believe this. Like, we just we just got ice cream down to Spielberg. He's like, oh my God, I know he's on his yacht because that's why I didn't have you send him ice cream, because I knew I couldn't get it to him. Let's call him. And so, Bob Iger, standing at the Gowanus shop in Ample Hills, calls Spielberg on his phone and puts him on speakerphone from his yacht. And he's like sitting there telling us about how much he loves Nona D's oatmeal lace. It's the best ice cream he's ever had, and how we're going to have to work together later. That was the moment. Everything after that, it just
It's incredible.
It was definitely, I still, if I could travel back in time to one moment, outside of getting married, like that was the moment.
Wow. Okay.
There you go.
Outside of our marriage, like that was the
All
moment.
right. Well, I'm glad.
Or
at least
maybe the
that.
birth of our children. Sorry, we
there
tried
you
that.
go. Yeah. Don't forget about that one. Okay, so it's insane. It really is. And when you think about, you have this idea and you love this thing, but for better or for worse, you're an amateur, right? This is not your thing. You didn't study, you didn't do this for this is just something that you loved. And then fast forward, and all of this is coming true for you and more, and then it all, what happens?
It was March of 2020, the same time basically that the city shut down for COVID, that we filed for bankruptcy in Ample Hills. And it wasn't like it came as a surprise for us, but it was, and it was, we knew to expect something. We just didn't, and we were trying to stave off the bankruptcy for as long as we possibly could. And then we couldn't.
Yeah, I think that, we mentioned the factory and how, that was really what sunk us. Basically, when we built the factory out, we thought we had about 15 shops, and we thought the throughput in the factory was going to be such that we needed about 15 shops to have the factory be at a break even for it to be working. The factory opened for business maybe 12 months before we filed for bankruptcy. It was that short. It took us 2 years to build it out. We were over budget by like $2 million on the build out. That hurt, but that would never be a reason to, file for bankruptcy. That hurt, but it was that once we opened, within 6 months of opening, we could see that we needed to have 25 to 30 shops of throughput for the factory to be break even. So we basically were doubling the cost of making our ice cream overnight in a space that was supposed to lower the cost of making the ice cream by becoming more efficient.
Yeah.
And it would have. I mean, the whole plan would have worked had we just had, an extra $10 million in the bank and build out another 10 shops.
But I don't, how would an investor not decide to put that cash?
Because it was, there was just, they were too tired of, it had been a Pollyanna-ish story, but like it was like, one, we had gone over budget on the thing, and we'd also taken a year longer to build out than we thought it would. We thought it would take a year to build. It took 2 years.
It's your first factory you've ever built.
Yes. But our investors were just tired. And when believe me, we spent about 6 months, because we knew in July of 2019 that we weren't going to get through the winter. Ice cream in the Northeast is a seasonal business. And while you're open all year long, you only make your profits in the summer months, and you have to steel yourself for the losses that you experience in the winter months. And so we could see in July of 2019 that we weren't going to make it through the winter. And so we stopped paying bills come November, everywhere. And we spent the next 3 or 4 months trying to, stave off to the very bitter end in March when we filed. But all that summer and into the fall, we were talking to people, trying to, we talked to Bob. Bob, spent a long time trying to see if he could get Disney to like step in. I mean, there were a lot of efforts, but nothing ever ended up, getting over the finish line. But the thing that I think hurt the most, but in retrospect, at least still feels like okay, was that we didn't fail because people stopped liking the ice cream, or the brand itself had taken a hit. In fact, the shops were all still, wonderful and successful. We failed because of, our own boneheaded decisions to like try to scale faster than we were ready to.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that you can have such a good product, and there has to be a obviously you learned a lot from that, right? But it sounds like the factory was the right move. It's just the timing of when you did it maybe was not right. Was there anything else that played in? Like if you had to rewind the clock.
I think the size of the factory,
And the location. I wish it could have worked in Brooklyn, and ideally that was the
Yeah.
place
or
for us.
maybe a
But
different place in Brooklyn.
yeah, yeah, somewhere far out in Brooklyn.
Is there a world where you do ice cream again?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm tired of ice cream. I'm burned out by ice cream. I mean, I love ice cream, and we did do ice cream again with the Social,
Yeah.
which was another brand. And I mean, I would never say never. We got an idea, a concept for a soft serve thing that we've thought
Yeah.
about, but
Yeah. You know what? Let's then just talk about the new concept. And then we're going to, try some food.
well, we've pivoted from ice cream to chicken because
Cows, chickens. You're the
Farm
you're the
animals.
same.
that's right.
We're staying in the farm.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time trying to think through, different food concepts, different things that, we love, we love to eat, and different vehicles that we could sort of take the same creative storytelling that we took to Ample Hills and apply it to different kind of food that wasn't, that we could bring a new angle to it. We know something that Jackie and I have done really well is the branding and the storytelling, and the sort of the why behind the thing. And that, of course, the what with the ice cream was really good at Ample Hills, but it was the whole sort of package that, created that moment in time. And so I think, just sort of looking through it and, hit upon, chicken wings, honestly, is something that I always love and, make every Super Bowl and make all during the year. But I just, was trying to think about how to think about chicken wings in a way where we could elevate them in the same way that historically Five Guys came along and elevated a burger over a McDonald's or a Burger King, and obviously Chipotle elevating over Taco Bell and all the different things, right? Bark, the hot dogs, elevating it over the local hot dog vendor, and so I haven't seen at a scale, at a fast casual level, somebody sort of treating chicken wing and chicken wing flavors beyond the traditional. There's the barbecue, there's the garlic parmesan one, there's the teriyaki one, or the sort of, and treating them with the same kind of branding and storytelling love. And so that's sort of the impetus, and then sort of from that it's sort of grown into like also looking at how to take a chicken burger and elevate it, because nobody in the history of time said chicken burger and got excited from a culinary point of view. And so it's a sad cousin to a turkey burger, which in turn is a sad cousin to an actual beef burger. But I think I found a way to sort of cook a chicken burger in a way that I think is going to excite people. And it's just, maybe I'm being a little cagey because I don't want to necessarily let all of the eggs out of the basket, but we're, because we're still very much in an early R&D place, and where we're at with developing it. But
I am curious if we talk about R&D for a minute,
Yeah.
because you're a writer, and there's a part of the process of any creative process where you have to sort of brainstorm and come up with ideas.
Yeah.
You guys come up with this idea of chicken, which obviously you land on. Chicken is sort of the byproduct of the why, but when you're going through this sort of like ideation process of like what you're going to, what you want to create, where do you start? Do you sort of go really wide and just, is your brainstorming process like just anything that will stick, you throw everything at the wall? Like how do you go about like ideating before you land on an idea?
Yeah, that is a good question. I spend a lot of time at the grocery store, walking the aisles of the grocery store. I'm mostly make the dinners for the family, and so I go every day to the grocery store. I don't I should probably buy groceries for the week, but it's part of my sort of a daily ritual. And I honestly go down and I used to do this at Ample Hills. I just walk down the cereal aisle and I'd look at like, oh, well, those are, what could I make an ice cream flavor out of here? Or the cookie aisle, or the nuts, or the candies, or the crackers. And so I think that, sort of post ice cream and thinking through chicken, and, I looked at a lot of different ideas. I had a soda idea that was sort of like a ice cream soda kind of concept, but in a bottle. But it's more complicated from a bottling point of view, and so just sort of walking through. Mostly, it's walking through those aisles and looking at that, and then once sort of hitting upon, at least what the idea is, meaning it's chicken or it's chicken wing. Then we sort of try to step back and build a narrative around how can we tell this story, or what do we want to build out of this, and for us with the chicken, it's really sort of trying to get at the American experience, the sort of the journey, the traveling, the sort of going from this neighborhood, this state to that state, this geographic area, and telling stories that are both geographic and cultural through different flavors of chicken wings or different flavors of chicken burgers. And it's something that we did again with ice cream flavors over and over again. And so it was sort of looking at how to sort of, if we can create a sense of wanderlust and a sense of pride in that American experience, when you come into a four-wall shop and get chicken wings, then you're not just getting chicken wings, right? That's the what, but you're getting something that is sort of a richer experience. And maybe it's not on the conscious level, maybe it's just subconscious, but that I think is what attracts us to how that creative process.
Yeah, I love that. Well, do you want to make some chicken?
Yes. Well, you got to try the chicken wings. Yeah.
Let's hop in the kitchen, make some chicken.